When we travel around, oftentimes the practicalness of the message of Restoration International is very impactful on somebody, and they will say things to us like, "Oh, if I'd only met your ministry when my children were young." Or they'll say, "How long have you guys been going?" And we say, 20 plus years. And it's like, "How come I never heard of you?" So we're trying to fix that bit by bit. And one of the ways that we are working on that is by making a series of documentaries, mini documentaries, about families who have come to family retreat in a state of need, have come to the family retreats for a number of years, implemented the principles, and then had fairly radical change in their families. And we are going to be putting together a whole series of these. The first one has been filmed in Southern California. You'll see the family on the screen in a moment. And Caleb has made us a short trailer, which we want to show, just giving the AV guys the chance to prep up. But the idea is it's going to, once the full-blown documentary is ready, which will be June 1, then that'll go up on the Restoration International YouTube channel and on the Restoration International website as well. And then shortly after that, there'll be another one. And shortly after that, there'll be another one. So we just wanted to make you aware of that because we want you to share it with anybody and everybody. We want this to go as far and as wide as possible. So if we could just roll that trailer at this point, I'd appreciate it.
My life without Christ was empty. It was tough growing up.
All I wanted to do was numb myself of what was going on in my life. Basically that being a wake-up call to the fact that I needed to change.
And it was tough because I was like, what's going on with our marriage? I thought God was gonna help us. And my wife was like, I remember this till this day. She says,
if something didn't change at this camp, I was just ready to end my marriage.
God has blessed us with what we have. We might be around the whole city and everything, but whatever we have here, God protects it because we let Him guide us.
I have to say, I don't think that our family would survive in the environment that we live in without the tools that we've learned through family retreat.
So the documentary series will be called Real Families, and then each documentary will have an individual title. It's quite an expense for Restoration International. Caleb and I have to go off and spend a few days somewhere, and of course it costs to get there and it costs to get back, and you got to eat whilst you're there, and then we kind of contract Caleb. He does a lot of work for free for the ministry, but this we thought we should pay him, so we have to pay his time and use his gear. So if any of you have a burden to see this kind of documentary financed, propagated, then please see one of the Restoration International team, and we'd love to talk to you. So we're going to have ensemble now, I believe. I better leave the announcements to these guys.
Our special music will be the NFR Youth Ensemble.
And we'll have the youth panel after that.
Yeah, Zachary Rue will have our prayer before the youth panel.
Would you kneel with me as we pray to open this meeting? Our Father in heaven, thank you for the opportunity that we have to get together and learn practical ways to serve you better in our lives. And as we enter this youth panel and listen to what these young people have to say, and to you speaking through them, I ask that you would give them the words to answer these questions that have been posed, that they may reach the hearts of the people who ask them and also other people who may be struggling or wondering the same things. And to those of us listening, I pray that God would open our hearts to what he would have us learn tonight. This world is, it's a difficult place to live as a Christian young person. Our generation faces challenges that, some of which are unique to this time in history. Other generations haven't had the same environment that we have. And our deepest desire is to serve you in this world, to be your ambassadors, your light. And so as we come together to learn ways, practical ways that we can do this in various areas of our lives, as families, as young people, as parents, or whatever role we find ourselves in. Please open our hearts and send your Spirit upon this meeting. In Jesus' name, amen.
Can you take this out of the way? Is this good? Or are we too far back? We're too far back. Let's go forward. We'll just give the ensemble a chance to reconnect with their family. It's been a blessed Sabbath. Have you enjoyed yourselves? Amen. I wish we could do this every weekend. That would be great. But, alas. So we have 6 young people here. These are not special young people. These have just been picked fairly randomly from the congregation. They're people that we know. It's difficult sometimes to bring a young person up here that you just don't know what they're going to say. So I don't know what these guys are going to say. They don't know the questions they're going to be asked. They have not. For the first time ever, I almost told them one of the questions. And they said, no, we don't want to know. We don't want to know. So you are going to get their honest heart responses. Thank you, Zachary, for your prayer. What I was going to do is I was going to go along the young people first, get them to introduce themselves, the name, age, and what you're doing in life, just so that you guys know where they're coming from. So I'm going to start with this guy on the end, who I think I know. Tell us about yourself.
My name is Caleb Brain, and I'm 19 years old, and I'm an entrepreneur and film maker. I'm from Montana.
My name is Vashti. I am 20 years old, and starting tomorrow, I'll be working on a farm in Oklahoma.
My name is Alan Seiler, and I am 24, and I run a small market farm in south central Oklahoma with my family.
My name is Vanessa Besser. I'm 25, and I'm looking into starting my own business in calligraphy.
My name is Michael Huffaker. I am 27 years old and from Joplin, Missouri. I am currently working in an outpatient physical therapy clinic there as a physical therapist.
My name is Annika Perry, and everyone calls me Ani. And I'm 23. I run a YouTube channel with the weekly videos teaching people how to cook healthy.
So we got a good variety, don't you think? We got farmers and filmmakers and YouTubers and all kinds of stuff and everything in between, physical therapists. Okay, so off we go. You guys asked a lot of good questions. I hope we get to them all. First one. Oh, I should tell you. Sometimes there's that little awkward silence. Well, it's not awkward. They're just thinking. And it'd be good if you were thinking as well. Okay? How can I gain more freedom and trust so my parents are not on my case all the time? How can I gain more freedom and trust so my parents won't be on my case all the time? I'm sure you've experienced parents being on your case all the time. And
Well, I think it goes back to the parable of the talents where the master comes back, and the ones that were faithful, he says, you have been faithful over the little things, now I will make you faithful over much. So when your parents ask you to take out the trash that afternoon, so the trash man can pick it up the next day, and you were outside doing something, playing in the woods or whatever, and you forgot. Little things like that can go a long ways to build the trust. Because if you can do the small things that your parents want you to do, they're going to be more trusting of the bigger things in life that come along. And consistency is a big key, because you can't do it half the time and miss the other half and expect to gain trust and respect.
Good answer. You got another one, Alan?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we can do as young people as well is to be brutally honest with our parents on the details of life. So the idea is not just doing what they tell us, but the idea is, and of course, this might be something difficult depending on where your relationship is with your parents, so I want to be sensitive on maybe where those dynamics, there's only so far you can take these questions, because I would have so much follow-up questions for this individual. But like for me, basically saying, hey Dad, I'm thinking about doing this or thinking about spending this money, I want to hear your thoughts on that. And so when they know that you're bringing them into that discussion in your life, then they don't have to fear if you're going to, let's say in my case, mismanage money. I make fairly large purchases on my own quite often, but it's because I've come to my parents in a lot of those questions. I mean, they give me a credit card, and I'll make several $100 purchases. I know people are like, if they spend over $100, then you can't do anything. Like, in our whole farming situation, I've been giving a certain amount of money, and it's a budget, and but that's come from over time and really eliciting their help, because quite honestly, I'm afraid to spend money sometimes, so I go back. So to them, so just to sum up, basically really bring them to your lives and be very clear about your intentions, what you're trying to do, what you would like to accomplish, and bring them in so that they feel like in any area in life, oh, I don't have to worry about this because I know that they're going to come to me for advice.
I got another question to kind of ride on the back of it. So this person, wants to know what they can do to get some trust so that the parents aren't on them all the time. But how is that process, how is it changed if you are dishonest or untrustworthy? What does that do? Or in your experience, if you did that, what did that do to your relationship with your parents? As far as trying to get this freedom thing.
I'm kind of wondering if the premise of the question might be slightly off, because, freedom is a very dynamic word in many respects, because, freedom isn't necessarily, by definition, I can do whatever I want. Freedom has many different flavors, so I might challenge the premise of what this person's expectations is based on the aspect that if it's not your parents, you are going to be accountable to someone else in your life in the future. So it's not a question of this ultimate type of artificial freedom that we kind of strive after, but no one ever achieves, because we're always accountable to other people. So I would first challenge the premise of the question to define what you actually mean by freedom. Now, in situations where I haven't been as responsible, I lose privileges, but I'm 24, but the thing is that I would rather be brutally honest with my parents about the reality of my spiritual life and lose privileges and gain that quote-unquote lack of freedom, but when you give certain freedoms away, quote-unquote, you actually gain accountability, which is much more valuable. So I would encourage young people to really analyze, and of course I don't know the definite situation with this person, which might change my response here, but I would challenge the premise of what is freedom, because you're always going to be accountable to someone, and then making those trade-offs, because sometimes the trade-off from freedom can, in a way, be more valuable than maybe the freedom that you might think is more valuable. It might not be as valuable as you think it is.
Okay.
I just like to spur something Alan mentioned with the freedom. Freedom, and of course, this question is very broad in the freedom that that the child is obviously wanting, because freedom comes in very many forms. Freedom, as Alan mentioned, in finances, or it could come in freedom in relationships, or freedom on, say, a device. Not having your parents constantly in your little world. And one thing I would mention about that is that you should always have your parents' involvement in in your device, in your relationships, in all these different things. I know for me, just to give a personal example, for me, for many years, the parents are wanting to read my text messages and emails and different things like that. And I was not really liking that, to be very honest. It just felt awkward every time, I would have to text somebody. I would have to go give my parents my phone and say, hey, can I send this? Or, can I, here's, what somebody so-and-so said to me. It was especially with texting those of the opposite gender. And I didn't really enjoy it very much. It was I felt kind of as a restriction. But over the years, and I'm definitely nowhere near perfect, but over the years I have learned that it's actually a very nice freedom just about to have, that your parents can look at your text messages, they can look at who you communicate with at any point, any time, and there shouldn't be anything there that you need to hide. Now we have it set up that actually we have a older iPad that is sat on the countertop and it's signed into my Apple ID, so anyone in our household can just go at any point in time and go look at anybody that I text. And I'm comfortable with that. Now, maybe 2 years ago, I might not because I was doing anything different 2 years ago in my communication with people, but I just had the mentality, and I think a lot of young people that I've talked to have the same mentality, is their parents, maybe don't really understand with their freedoms and so forth, and they feel like they have to have their own life outside of their parents. But in reality it's not bothering me to have my parents know the people I communicate with. If they have advice on that, then, I will take that advice, hopefully, and, change how I'm communicating with people. And that's just the one side of, communicating, and that could also extend into relationships and other things as well.
Okay, good. Let's move on to another one. This is from the first one didn't have an age or a gender. This one says it's a 13-year-old male. Why is it good to be a vegetarian? I don't know if you boys remember what it was like to be 13, but I remember when Caleb was 13, he would eat anything, it seemed. It was just food was a big thing. Still is.
Why is it not good to be a vegetarian, I think is the more appropriate question.
No, I'm asking the questions. You answer them, okay? I want an answer. Why is it good? I don't want an answer. This 13-year-old boy wants an answer. Why is it good to be a vegetarian? Any of you vegetarians?
I would say one thing from the study of Ellen White that our family has done is Ellen White talks very, very much about the lower passions, eating meat and those other different things. It's not healthy for us as human beings to be eating those rich foods, those processed foods, and so forth. The original diet of Eden was grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables and stuff. I forget the exact words Ellen White uses, but I think it's something to the effect of in the least processed manner, or I forget the exact wording. But why is that? Because that is the most natural way that we can enjoy food. So I think, at least for me, everyone else probably has a different answer. But for me, we're not trying to let sin have fuel. And even though it might seem weird, like how can being a vegetarian affect who I am and sin in my life? It can. I don't honestly understand it, but it can. And obviously, it has an effect, just like music and movies and all the other things have an effect on us. It's the purest, trying to get to the purest part of any situation.
For me, the health benefits of being vegetarian, I feel, are secondary, which I do believe that being vegetarian is healthier than eating meat. But when we put things in our body that are not the most whole, it clouds the mind. And the mind is how God communicates with us. And so if we are constantly doing things to cloud our mind, our judgment's going to be impaired. We're not going to be open to that still small voice. So the healthy, you're not saved by vegetarian, but it is the best way for God to communicate through us, through our mind, and to keep it the clearest.
Okay, I got another question for you. This is somebody down there. Oh, Chef Arnie had a question, an answer.
This is a very broad and very good question. And I'm just going to give you a quick little resource that if you want some more information on vegetarian cooking, you can go to chefani.com. There is plenty of recipes out there that you can learn how to cook healthy.
You didn't say plugging wasn't allowed, so.
That's true. Okay, so
is Sabbath over? Is Sabbath?
As we get young people up here with their own businesses, we'll have to. We might have to come up with some new rules. Better Together and Advent Film and. Anyway, so thank you, Arnie. Is it okay to have a good friend of the opposite sex that you do things with? I'm presuming innocent things. So
I love working with my sister. Absolutely, hands down.
absolutely. Okay, anybody else outside of your siblings?
You know, okay, I need to be careful how I say this.
If you need time to think, Alan, it's okay. You don't have to. I'm just coaching them along the way here. Just process, think it through. One time we were doing youth panel. Oh, it was hilarious. There was one guy on there. I love him to bits. He knows I do. And he would always pick up the mic first. And he'd go, "Whoa, that was a good question. Let me think about that." And he just stretching around. And, of course, nobody else can answer it because he's thinking out loud. And I said, "Okay, just think without the microphone in your hand. It's easier." So is it okay to have a good friend of the opposite sex?
I have a friend, I'm not going to say who this is, but I remember when we started our
Is it a boy or a girl?
It's a girl.
Okay.
And our interests align in agriculture quite a bit. And like right in the beginning, like when this thing was starting, I have resources. I love agriculture. And so like anyone that's willing to talk about it, I'm like, oh, type of thing. This is me. But
do you have a website they could go to?
Well, no. But this was a really good technique, and it really came from her than it came from me. She like right up front said, "Look, I'm not interested in being in a relationship. I'm not trying to push anything here. I'm just interested in agriculture." And I said, "Look, if I'm interested in a future relationship potentially in this area, I will be intentional about it. I'm not going to try to slide anything on the backside here." And it was set up right at the beginning, and that was really helpful. So, in that context, when you set the boundaries to start, I think that's really helpful. I think that's really helpful. And quite honestly, the resources that we potentially miss from my sister's really smart. She's very bright, and I'm not saying that girls aren't bright all the time, so I want to be careful how I say this, but they're really smart, and if you can tap into that, it's really a resource. It's 50% of the population, or whatever that statistic is, that and a lot of time in these circles, we don't even tap into, and there's a wealth of knowledge and information and learning that can happen there. If we define the parameters, I think it can be extremely valuable.
Amen. Any of you have a thought? It's okay. No pressure. No pressure.
I think it's fine to have friends who are opposite gender. You just have to deal with it differently and not share certain things with them that you do with girls.
Yeah. Yeah. What about, I think it's a great answer, but what about, just spending lots of time together, just the two of you? Would that be wise? Alan's going into a nervous twitch.
I think just to spur of what, it kind of spurs your question spurred off of Ashley, and what I was thinking it kind of spurs off of Ashley and your question. And that is, there is definitely a very different, between a guy and a girl, there needs to be a very different friendship between a guy and a guy and a girl, in these types of friendships. Definitely more, clearer boundaries. If it's in a public place like this, then, spending time with somebody, none of us, I think, up here are dictating what you should and shouldn't do. It's different for every person. But, yeah, spending time with somebody isn't wrong. So as long as it's in a public, wholesome place, then naturally, what's wrong with that? There isn't anything wrong with that if it's in a natural, wholesome place. As Vashti said, you're not going to be closest friends with somebody of the opposite gender. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be friends with those of the opposite gender. I think it's a very much of a gap. Unfortunately, our society, in the more conservative society that we live in family tree circles and so forth, I think it's a very big thing that it has been pushed so much from the one side that now people think, well, no, you shouldn't communicate with those of the opposite gender, or they think that if you're going to walk up to them and talk to them now that you want to marry them. Well, not exactly. That isn't really the case. And so I think having a healthy balance is very needed.
A healthy balance. Okay. Anything else? Okay, no, let's move on. This is from a male. Doesn't give an age. I say the handwriting looks teenager-like. It's just a guess. I'm addicted to media and do not know how to stop. Put it down. What can I do to be free of this addiction? I don't know if that's just media as in movies or if it's social media. That seems to be a bit more addictive.
Really good question, by the way.
I think it's the case with any addiction. The addiction, the problem needs to be removed. But not only does the problem need to be removed, then it needs to be filled, because we know that Satan, fills idle hands. And so if we pull out something that, I'm not saying that maybe you don't need to completely remove, but if you are addicted to it and you feel that you are addicted to it, maybe for a certain period of time, you do need to remove all contact with, social media or media in general. Of course, that's, as Dad said, a very, very broad topic. But instead of just, taking it out, replace it with something. Whatever that can be, spending more time with your family, maybe, getting a job or something. If you're, still in school and you're spending a lot of time on media now that, frees up some time that you can, do some more useful, labor and so forth. The big thing I would say is make sure you fill the gap. Don't just remove it and not fill it, because it'll be filled with something, but it won't be something that, is going to be wholesome.
I would learn something new, discover new hobbies, try something different that you've always wanted to do but you've never done. And I think that will help a lot with not missing it. And I also agree that you should go on like a media fast. Just determine a time that you're going to fast from the media and stick with it no matter how hard it is, and then slowly reintroduce it for whatever the time is that you feel is right. But use the time just use your time to do other things that are more productive, learning new hobbies and so forth.
I would piggyback on the media fast that after a few days of going without it, you'll probably realize it's not as important to you as you thought it is. And where you thought it was, oh, I have to be on this device or watching this show, you're like, well, I went a few days without that, and I'm okay. I'm still alive. And I filled it with all these other interesting things that I hadn't really even thought about before. And so when you start to bring it back, you're not quite as interested and involved with it as you might have been before.
If you watch Chef Annie, it's okay, you know, it doesn't.
So if this media was on your phone, what would you do with your phone?
This is actually a personal challenge, and I want to become a little vulnerable on this with you guys, because it is a real thing, and quite honestly, I don't feel like the addiction or the strength of the addiction actually lies in the addiction itself. I really feel like most addictions, if not all addictions, are really a symptom of a deeper issue within. And so, I mean, you know, it's not, of course, it depends on the type of media, but it's not bad to watch media, but we're talking about quantity here, and almost binging is kind of the idea that I'm getting on media. And I've been guilty of this, but I find that what causes me to fall into that trap really has to do with many things that preceded that, which is basically, how do I manage anxiety? How do I manage anger? How do I manage stress? How do I manage all these things? Because usually media is used a way so that you can time out your mind to stop thinking about the things you're worried about and just kind of, quote unquote, have a break. And so in that way, if you never address these issues like stress and anxiety and anger and frustration at that level, it doesn't really matter what the addiction form is. You could binge on sermons, and I've done that before, okay? Because the idea is that it gets my mind off of what I am worrying about. But the idea is that we'll never have victory unless we hit the issue direct on. And I find that stress, anxiety, the pressures, like it says in Steps to Christ, life cares and perplexities, the faults of others, our own faults and failures, to any and all of these, the devil will seek to divert our mind. Okay? So if we don't address our addiction on that issue, I'm sorry to this individual, but I feel very confident in saying that you will never overcome this addiction, and if you let this addiction down, the addiction will pop up somewhere else, and it might be a more stronger and more destructive addiction. And so I would first open up to your parents, and secondly, try to go through analyzing maybe the root cause. And this might sound a little drastic, but I've personally done this, but I would suggest someone reading through Alcoholics Anonymous, the book, the 12 steps, because really what they're trying to focus on is they're like saying, look, it's not about the alcohol addiction, it's about what makes you go to the alcohol. And I really feel like this individual will, even though it's not necessarily applicable as far as the type of addiction, but those 12 steps are incredibly powerful, and they're biblically based. And I would highly recommend that.
Okay, good job. This is kind of a quick fire question. I'm going to go along all of you. And you're just going to give me one yes or no. Okay? I'll start with Caleb. Okay, so it's from a mom of youth. Do you think it is possible to be unspotted from the world? Sounds like James to me. While being on Facebook, Snapchat, and or Instagram? Do you think it's possible to be unspotted from the world whilst being on those networks? So Caleb, give me your one-word answer.
Undetermined. It's very hard to give a yes or no answer on that situation because it depends. But
what does it depend on?
It depends on how a person is using this, how a person is using social media. Very much so.
Okay.
But
All right then. So let's make this real personal. Do you think it's possible to be unspotted for the world whilst being on Facebook, Snapchat, and Instagram, just like you are?
I believe if it is used like I strive to do in a rightful manner, I think yes, it can be. If it is used as an addiction, as a time waster, as something that is not bringing us up, then no, I don't think it can be, because it will pull us down. But I think if it's used correctly, then yes, I believe so.
Okay. These two are having a conversation, hoping I'll skip them. But we can. What do you reckon to this question? Is it sending some shivers up your spine, or go Vashti?
The question.
You want the question
The
again?
unspotted part.
Yeah. Do you think it is possible to be unspotted from the world whilst being on social media?
She wants to define what do you believe unspotted actually means?
Free from all, unspotted is free from all sin.
We're called to be unspotted from the world, not contaminated with the world.
I agree with Caleb. It just depends how you use it.
Yeah.
Yes, you can be unspotted from the world if you use it in the right way.
Okay, Alan, keep it short, man.
From a personal level, because I'm not going to try to enter into what these guys, maybe they're better than I am. For me, no.
Okay, alrighty. How about Vanessa?
Yes, I believe you can, as long as you use it in the right way and it's not an addiction or, like someone said, a time waster. Because Instagram for me became kind of a time waster. And even though I still go on there, I don't do it as much, and I just find myself more free and having more free time.
I would give that a no.
You'd give that a no? Okay.
I would say it's a difficult question because, you can go either way. There's
Yes.
plenty of bad on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and all the social medias. But I believe if you truly talk to God about it, and you truly are accountable with the people in your life, like your family. I'm always checking in with my parents to make sure that, they know what I'm looking at and what I'm following. And I think you can if you just do it in the right way. Everything in moderation.
Excellent. Okay, so you got some answers there. This question: what are some of the principles in regard to money management that would be helpful for a young person to think about? Money management. Some principles. Money management. What are some of the basic principles of money management?
Well, being the son of an accountant, this has been drilled in my head since I could probably walk.
Or before even.
Probably before, in the womb. But the three, I'll give you three, a simple three-step process that will save you a lot of heartache. It's the 3 S's. It's save, shop, and spend. So yes, exactly in that order. If you get the order mixed up, bad things can happen. Because first you got to determine, do I really need this? And you need to have the money to buy this thing that you want, because sometimes you see something real quick. Advertisements are designed to make you want that product. And sometimes when you start saving for it, you really determine, maybe I don't need that as much as I thought I did. And then if you decide that, you have all this money you saved up for maybe something you need later on down the road that you really need.
I am the daughter of an accountant, and one thing that I've learned is if you want to buy something, if you see something and you're like, oh, I really want to buy this, is think about it. Don't buy it right then. Go home, think about it, and that pretty much every time I've done that, I've never gone back and bought it.
Caleb, you want to give a testimony here? I know you really well. I know you've had some fun in this area. You don't have to. I mean,
No, I wasn't sure if you're meaning like a specific example or just in general. But naturally, I think probably where Dad is coming from is naturally, some of you may know this just by looking at me, but naturally, I'm more of a spender. And it is something that, especially as a filmmaker, a spender in a filmmaker is kind of not a very good thing because filmmaking things cost a lot of money. And there's always a better version. And but I've had to learn that, you know, I'm a guy and I'm gonna need to save up at some point in life. I can't sponge off my parents my entire life or hope my wife comes, you know, with a bunch of money or something. I'm gonna have to find a way not only to, you know, make money. I think that's something that we think of more is it's hard to make money. Yes and no. It's hard to save money. I think that's and I know for me that is the case. For me, it's not so much hard to, you know, make money in the work that I do. It's hard for me to keep that money and it not just go out into, you know, equipment or whatever. So I think, as Michael said, saving is a very big important step for that.
I would also add a word to the parents. Do not make your kids believe you are a money tree. And when your kids want something, you buy it for them. This is a very bad thing to do that will have major consequences down the line. So I would recommend getting your kids involved with your finances. Have them, at age appropriate, of course, have them go to you to the store, give them a list, give them so much money, have them look at the prices, and also teach them the value of $1. If you keep giving them things when they ask for it and they don't have to work for it, they're going to think that's going to happen when they're 18, when they're 25, when they're 40. So teaching kids that work is important, and we're going to have to work before we can have the stuff that we want and need. It'll save a lot of heartache down the line.
Okay. Any of you guys into tithe and offering? Should we do a yes/no on that one?
I'm presuming all of us.
Okay, I just didn't want the question to go by without that. But okay, this is a little lighter one, but maybe it's not so light if you think about it. Is it okay to take lots of selfies? I mean, like 3 years ago, nobody even knew what a selfie was. So you've got to deal with it.
It was looking in the mirror too much. That's what it was, probably.
Okay, all righty. Well, this is the new version. What do you think when you see somebody's social media feed and it's just always a picture of them?
It really, it really doesn't look good. I mean, quite honestly, even though you might be a good-looking person, the thing is that, the human condition inherently is about self. And we see this from Scripture. And, if we want to take the Scriptures seriously about that, it's about looking for others' goods more than for ourselves and being others-focused instead of self-centered. And, I know a lot of people that, I know a decent amount of people that do it. And of course, I don't know what's going on in someone's mind, and I wouldn't presume to judge that necessarily. But I know that if it was me, and there are other situations where it might not be a selfie of you, but it might be you in a picture. And, how often are you going back to see how many likes you get on something like that? That speaks volumes to how much you're thinking about self. And quite honestly, this is something that we're born with. We cry when we want food and all these types of things. And I really believe that this is something that, and it might not be selfies for other people, but it applies across the board. We need to sit down and say, Lord, I am a prideful, broken, sick individual, and I need your divine help to cure me from this, because without that divine intervention, there's no hope for me. And I mean, the selfies might be one angle, but I would challenge anyone in any other area of life that we need to feel our need. And someone that's taking selfies to try to feel successful and at peace and okay with themselves has not come into the joy of God's grace. And so I would challenge that person that is like doing this maybe excessively, that there's something so much better out there that God has for us than these types of activities, and he's waiting to give it to us.
Yeah, I agree with what Alan's saying. I think using selfies as a way to help our insecurities, that's not as Alan said, that's not a good way to be using selfies. I think as in pretty much all these things we've talked about, there's two sides though, because documenting something. So say we're here and there's a group of people, and we might want to take a selfie together. That's not, I don't think anyway, that's not focusing on me. That's not focusing on my insecurity or whatever the situation is. That's focusing on documenting something. Maybe I can think of a particular selfie that I was in was at a friend's wedding. I was groomsman in a friend's wedding. It was a big bridal party. There was probably, I think, 8 or 9 participants per side, and so there's like 20 or 30 people. And it's a cool selfie to look back at later, because you see all these different people and his friends, and it's documenting a time. It's documenting a memory. I think that's very different to, as Alan was saying, the having selfies that are just constantly of you because that is wrong because of self.
Okay, good job. Let's move on. The next one is, how do I convince my parents that they need to have worship every day? It's kind of if you're a parent out there and you're not having worship every day, this could have been your kid who put this in.
I'm guessing that this person, I don't know if this person has asked their parents. I would start with that. Just say, hey, mom and dad,
It says, how do I convince?
How do you convince?
So I think there's probably been an asking, but it's needing something, it's needing some persuasion, some convincing.
A man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. There is a limitation to the level that we can convince someone. And so, I think that as an individual, we have to proclaim with our life how we want things to be, if possible. Of course, being the child, you don't necessarily set the standard or the schedule for the day, but maybe something to start with is first start in saying, look, I really feel like this would be a good value for ourselves. Maybe we could read some books together. Maybe reference some books and say, hey, look, here's some awesome books. It doesn't necessarily have to be just a morning devotional. It could be saying, hey, here's an awesome book with, missionary stories or something that might be more engaging to everyone but would challenge everyone spiritually. If that flops, then I would suggest you go alone on it and share during the day with those individuals. Say, hey, look, I did my morning devotionals this morning, and I was incredibly blessed. And this is what I learned. And start leading by example. Even a child shall lead them, right? Type of concept. And, in my situation with agriculture, my parents had no desire to be in agriculture, never saw themselves doing that. But I was passionate about it, and I loved reading it. And because of my enthusiasm, I'm happy to say that my family's really on board with it. But I was very, I do not force my family out into the garden. I maybe should do more at this point because they're more into it. And they're like, Alan, what do you want us to do, type of thing. But it was a principle. It says, look, if you don't believe in why you should be out here, I don't want you out here. Right. Okay? And so it needs to be your heart. Your heart has to be involved in it. If your heart's not there, then it's going to be a work in futility and it's not going to last. And so, but by leading by example, by being energetic, by sharing and being excited, the cogs start turning, and you might not think they're noticing, but you keep it up, and change happens. We're all always influenced by people around us.
And don't forget prayer. Prayer is very powerful. Pray for your parents, pray for a change, and that they will start implementing the family worship.
I think if you go into your living room or something and sit down and start reading, and your parent sees you reading, I think that's more of a convictingness in their heart than just you going to them and talking to them. It is also, but if you actually take the initiative to go sit down and play, sing, or read, it'll work, it'll help.
I totally agree. We have family worship in our home, but often one of us will take our Bible and we'll just put it out on the kitchen table and we'll start reading, just one of us. And it is amazing how many times, just in a few minutes, it turns into a Bible study. Just the whole family gathers and they go, "Oh, what you reading?" And then everyone starts reading and it turns into this family activity of worship.
Okay.
Can I share a verse real quick here that actually someone came up? Thank you. I don't know where they went, but and it's from 1 Timothy 4, verse 12. Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers in word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, and in purity.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. This one is a long question. You'll have to listen to me as I read it. It's from a 15-year-old girl. And it says up in the corner, kind of like after it was written, "Please answer. I seriously need help." So just listen. I'll try and read it the best I can. The writing's a bit squiggly. Am I considered fast? Which means you like everyone. If I think that boys are cute. I really want to know, because if it's wrong to think boys, plural, boys, are cute, then I guess I need to stop. Right now, I think 2 boys are very cute. Not that I'm going to marry them both. I just think they're both cute. So this is a girl, there's a couple of boys that she thinks are cute. You know, she knows, I'm sure, she's only going to marry one guy. So what does she do with this? Have you girls ever thought boys were cute? Or you boys ever thought girls were cute? It's so funny being up here as a dad, because I know exactly what is in Caleb's head. Because we've had all these conversations. You know, you can't put a price on transparency. It's just, what I mean by that is it's precious in our family, but Caleb's not probably going to tell you what's going on in his head. Anyway, somebody might have some courage to be transparent. I don't know. Okay, let me ask you another question. Have any of you thought 2 people were cute at the same time? Should we go down the line and do a yes, no?
Again, it's the same as your yes or no last time. It depends. It depends on
either they're cute or they're not cute. It doesn't depend on anything. Okay.
Wow.
Call it a crush. Cute, whatever you want.
Yeah, I think I can definitely say for myself, I've had crushes on people.
Okay, no, that's good. That's good. Okay, so you've had crushes on people. 2 people at the same time is what I want to know. Come on, don't give me... When your kids say they can't remember, you're getting closer, okay? Just remember that. Don't go for that I can't remember thing. So
guys, don't forget that easy, Caleb.
So are you done, Caleb, or are you going to go a bit further? I'm no pressure.
I can't think of a particular time where, I was, having a crush on 2 people at once. I honestly can't.
Okay.
But yes, I've had, I've had crushes on multiple people. That's not, yeah.
Just one after another rather than at the same time. Anybody else? I mean, come on, we're all made of the same stuff.
Well, I don't know about the two at the same time question, but I think all of us have thought someone was good looking at one point or another. And the thing is, where does your mind go with that? Does it stay there as, oh, he or she is really good looking, or does it go further down the wrong track? I think that's the really important thing to remember, is to be careful where your thoughts are going. And it's not wrong to think that someone's good looking, but where do you go with that thought?
Good answer. That's what Caleb was trying to say. So he tells me.
Yeah, the intent of the heart really matters. As you know, is it this? It's not. Well, it's like right after each other, but you know, and it's more from the male perspective. But you know, if you look at a woman lustfully, and I think it could go both ways for sure. There, the idea is that you know what's in the heart. But I think we need to realize as people and kind of face the fact that we're human, and that God created us with specific desires, and we shouldn't try to cover those realities out, because then it would be denying your humanity.
Yeah,
and
I'm right with you, Alan. So let me ask you, you've been pretty vulnerable. Any of you can answer this question. I'm kind of looking at Alan since he was talking, but have any of you ever gone to your parents and said, man, I really like either the look of or the character of somebody of the opposite gender? Have you ever done that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Well,
finally
we found a yes/no one. Okay, let's go back to Caleb.
And was it multiple people, like you know, this person and this person? I don't really know. What do you think? Absolutely. I think that's a healthy discussion with a parent with the child. I mean, it's a must. Sometimes it's not easy to know what to do, and they have more experience. And you know, it's a difficult situation. But yeah, I don't think. I mean, if you're in a relationship with someone, my personal opinion is it needs to be treated seriously, and you need to stay focused on that initial until it goes one way or the other. But in this kind of limbo intermediate stage, I think it's good to keep your eyes open and to talk to other people, trusted friends, and say, what do you think about this person? What do you think about that person? I think it needs to be done, and I'm sure everyone has done it, quite honestly.
Okay.
I fully agree with what Alan said. I guess he was just 2 rows down, so he didn't get the hot chair or something.
Any of you others want to talk about, you know, cuteness? And it doesn't just have to be cuteness. If it's just somebody that you admire, maybe it's you know, you just think, man, that is a really neat person. I'm attracted to that. Caleb, give somebody else a chance.
I would say to this 15-year-old girl that your feelings are completely normal. God designed us to be this way. He designed us to be attracted to people of the opposite gender. You also do have to realize, 15 years old, 2 years, 4 years, you are going to be a much different person. The person that you like or have a crush on, so to speak, is probably going to be a much different person. Right now is a really good time to be observing things you like in members of the opposite gender that, you know, I kind of like that trait, or no, I want to make sure someone I marry doesn't act like that, because there's not a lot of pressure, and you get to observe a lot of things that maybe later on in life you start to thinking further on down the road, and it's like, oh, those aren't a big deal. But if you've thought about these things earlier in your life, you can be more steadfast on them later.
Okay, so I'm the moderator. I can ask a question here. So this is a 15-year-old girl, but you're a variety of young people. You're wholesome young people, normal, you know. Can you remember what age you were when you first thought somebody was cute, or had a crush, or just noticed, wow? Can you remember what age you were?
9.
9. Any advances on 9? That's good. Thanks, Alan. I really appreciate this. Because I know there's parents out there, and it's like, my daughter's 10, and she noticed the boy. Help, help, the end of the world is coming. So I just want reality class here. Anybody else can remember how old they were?
I would say early teens. I can't think of an exact year, but I would say early teens. And just to spring off of what Michael said, the individual or whatever you can say that I had a crush on back then, I still know them to this day, but my outlook is very different because I'm 19, at 13 or whatever I was, now I'm 6 years older, they're 6 years older. We're both very, very different people than we were back then. So I think what he said, just as a practical example for you to see is, yeah, at 15 you might be thinking, this, but in 4 to, maybe 6 years down the road, however long it is, you will be very most likely thinking a very much different thing.
Yeah, maybe even 2 weeks later. Ani?
Yeah. I have thought boys were cute, but I don't know exactly when I started thinking that, probably in my teens somewhere. But as I have grown a little older, I have looked at it and said, cuteness fades. Features are going to fade. So the important part is to look at the character of the person that you are admiring, because that's what's going to last through life.
She's so rational.
And at 15, also just to spring what Ani said, at 15, yes, you might be thinking, okay, so I'm 15 now, I'm going to be looking at someone's character and strengths at 15. Well, by 19, that will change too. Not only will the external, your liking for external appearances change between early teens and late teens and then into 20s, but internally, the heart will change. You will change. Your personality will change through your teenage years. Their personality will change, and so what you might have found attractive, not even on cuteness wise, but what you find attractive more on a heart level, will also change throughout those years.
Okay.
One last thing is I would encourage this young lady to start making a list of character traits that she really admires in a future husband. And this list will grow and evolve over the years, but start now and keep your standards high and don't settle for less.
Amen. Now, the rest of the questions pretty much were all about courtship and dating, and all of them pretty much from this point on. I'm going to go through them, but I just want to throw this question out there because this is probably the most broad. What is the difference between dating and courtship?
I don't know if there is much difference. Like, I know some people use the term dating, some use the term courting, and they're really meaning the same things. But the main thing is like what you're doing. Do you have your parents involved? Are you praying? First of all, are you the right age? Because Ellen White says a youth not out of their teens is not a fit judge of a life companion. And that's inspired counsel.
There's so many personal definitions within even families on what those two words mean, and I think you, in some ways, it's not so much the definitions or the words themselves, but it's how you want to approach getting to know someone, and analyzing that. I've heard so many renditions of it. I think it's like what is love, and it's like, what do you mean? Type of thing. It's almost like that. It's been so, I don't want to say abused, but it's redefined and rescripted and scrapped and replaced, and I don't even think that, personally, I don't know if they're even relative words anymore to try to make a distinction.
That's a good point. Let me ask the question slightly differently. What's the difference between the way the world goes about relationships and the way that Christians would go about relationships?
I think the context, at least that I've always thought, is the context of dating is more a, and anybody can disagree with me here, but the context of dating is more of a lighter matter. The world, I feel like, is more on the dating side of things. You know, you just go date. You want to go on a date with somebody. You know, go on a date with that person this weekend. The next weekend, you know, you might be on a date with somebody else, and it's back and forth. You know, here, there, and everything. I think, and you know, as Alan said, these words are very, you know, hard to distinguish from. That's kind of been my thought. Is dating is a little bit more, I would say, more on the not so intentional. It's more of a flippant, to use, I don't know if that's the right word. A courtship is more of a, at least that I've thought, is more of a serious, you know, you're getting to, you know, you're courting someone. It's more of a long term. You're not just, you know, dating someone for a couple weeks. It's more of a long term, more serious, which, you know, this is a serious topic, which it should be serious.
I got some other questions.
I think in the spirit of prophecy, when she goes through the definition of how, especially in Adventist home, and I believe she talks about in messages to young people as well. But, you know, you hear I would say one of the things that I hear ringing in that counsel is intentionality. As far as you need to be intentional that if this does go somewhere, it will be going toward marriage. I'm not in this just to feel good and to have someone by my side. I actually have a thing. But I would probably, I don't know if this is a disagreement with Caleb or I don't know exactly, I didn't quite understand, but you mentioned the word light. And quite honestly, and I don't want to put any words in your mouth, Caleb, so I want to be very careful how I'm saying this. But the idea is that I think someone can be very intentional, but I think they can start out light, if this makes sense. So the idea is getting to know someone, talking to them, all these types of things could be considered like, wow, they're dating, they're not really serious, but it's what's going on in your mind behind the scenes. Are you being intentional, or are you going after this for a purpose, even though you might start out very simply and not with a lot of strings attached? So I think we have to be careful here, because some people think that courting is just like, I'm going to be married, you know, hell or high water type of situation to this individual. And quite honestly, I just don't think it's that simple. But you need to know in your own heart, how intentional am I in getting to know someone for the purpose of getting married? But then don't feel like getting into the relationship is pressuring you to marry that person either, but you're still intentional. So a lot of it comes down to heart work and being really introspective of, am I just doing this to feel good, or am I doing this because I want to honor God foremost and find a spouse that I can raise a family with that would honor and glorify God?
Amen. Thank you. I found we should be finishing right now, but I did find another question here that is off of the boy-girl thing. It says, 14-year-old male, I like to read. I recently got some...
I'm sorry?
I like to read.
No, how old is this person?
14.
14, okay.
I like to read. I recently got some classic novels. I've read several and enjoyed them, but my parents don't really like me to read them. I'm wondering what I should do.
You should listen to your parents first and foremost. And secondly, I believe Ellen White talks about novel reading and how it's harmful, and it just creates an imagination and this fairy castle building that's not good.
Okay, we're done. There are a few more questions, but I just want to tell you, I didn't tell these guys, or ask them, I should say, but I would consider them on duty for the rest of the evening. So if you didn't get your question answered, or you put a question in and it's like, oh man, they got the wrong end of the stick, I didn't mean that, then go and speak to them. They're on duty. They will be happy to answer your questions. And isn't that true? Well, two of them anyway are happy to answer your questions. I'm sure they will be. Because I know what it's like when you ask a question, it's not always interpreted, and I didn't get to all the questions because many of them were duplicated, so I just asked one. Would one of you like to volunteer to have prayer? Michael, thank you. Let's kneel as we close our youth panel for this evening.
Dear Father in heaven, we thank you that we can come together tonight and discuss openly and honestly some of the more tough questions that I and many of the young people in this room have been dealing with. And I pray that the answers given tonight will not fall on deaf ears and that they will be taken to heart. And most of all, these individuals will look towards you for the answers to all their questions. And we pray that you give us a safe evening as we go our separate ways for the night. In your name, amen.